Hi everyone, Success here. Welcome to TSG Data Desk. Today we're going to be talking about something that many people view as harmless entertainment, betting. A lot of us know someone who has placed a bet before or who is betting currently. The numbers are very scary, but they tell us a much bigger picture about money, risk, and who actually wins.
So taking it up from when Success landed, Africa has a major betting problem, yes. It has been reported by Geopol in 2025 that over 70% of adults in 6 major African markets were reported to have placed a bet at least once. We're talking about South Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. South Africa is leading the pack with an 83% participation rate, followed by Kenya at 79% and Nigeria at 73%. You see that all of these countries have above 70% participation in betting. So this means that betting is now a mass consumption activity and no more a niche hobby. And it is happening largely through mobile phones every single day at scale.
So let's start with the rich. How embedded is this in the market?
Very embedded, guys. The numbers are quite scary, like Success said earlier. In 2025, we have over 70% participation in betting across 6 of these major African markets. The 6 markets that I mentioned earlier: Nigeria, Ghana, Uganda, Tanzania, South Africa, and Kenya. Over 70% of the population is reported to have placed a bet at least once daily. Once daily, guys. That's a huge number. This level of participation tells us something very important. Betting is no longer a recreational habit that people engage in occasionally. It has now been culturally normalized, especially among young African working class people.
70%? That's a lot.
Crazy.
Participation is one thing, frequency is another. So how often do people place bets?
Okay, so when I was doing my research, this was the part that was very interesting to me, and it's a place where the risk profile actually changes. Do you know that 94% of bettors actually place bets through their mobile phone, right? 30% bet weekly and 30% bet daily. So we're talking about 30% of these 70% are placing bets daily through their mobile phone. And this habit has been perpetuated by access to mobile phones, right? Which is a good thing if you look at it outside of betting. But the fact that you have a mobile phone on your hand, you have access to data, means that betting is an activity that can occur anywhere. On your bed, while you are commuting, while you are working, you can just pick up your phone and place a bet real quick.
But bettors often say it's just small money. What does the data really show?
So, actually, if they say it's just money, it's just small money, they are not really lying in that sense. So the data shows that majority of bettors, especially in this part of Africa, namely the 6 countries we're referring to, right? For those that are just joining in on the video, I can explain. The 6 countries are Nigeria, Ghana, Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, and South Africa. So they've been reported to place less than $10 on bets monthly. But this is where it gets interesting. There's also a small group of people that reportedly place bets in hundreds of dollars daily. And this group, when you add the millions of people placing bets in $10 daily and people that place bets in hundreds of dollars daily, you realize that the numbers stack up to be an enormous number. And that is how a low risk, low effort activity has turned into a billion-dollar business as we know it now.
So let's zoom in on Nigeria for a moment.
So in Nigeria, the numbers are very interesting, right? So Geopol has reported that the online gambling market in Nigeria is estimated at 5.6 trillion naira. That's about $3.6 billion in USD, right? So the numbers also say that 16 million Nigerians place bets daily. You guys, 16 million Nigerians place bets on a daily basis. That is scary, that is crazy, and that is wild. So 60 million Nigerians placing bets daily amounts to $5 million in wagers daily. So we have $5 million flying around the market daily from people placing bets of $10, 500 naira, 1,000 naira. It stacks up to $5 million on a daily basis. And this is happening in a country where stock market participation is very low compared to betting, right? So for most people, betting is the most familiar and most accessible financial risk activity.
So, if millions of people are actually betting, who is making the money?
You guys, I know you like to deceive yourself that you're making money from betting, and I use deceive very, very intentionally. But in the grand scheme of things, the operators are usually the ones making the money. Not usually, the operators are the ones making the money currently. Globally, betting is highly, highly profitable. For example, Super Group, the parent company of Betway, reported a revenue of 1.6 billion euros in 2024. And when they were done, profit before tax was about 188 million euros. That's a wild amount of money coming from betting. Then locally in Nigeria, companies like Bet Nigeria and Bet King are dominating the Nigerian market for betting, right? For example, Bet King last year reported a revenue of $106 million. That's your 1,000 naira year and year. That is making up that amount, right? So if you look at the numbers, right, betting actually works and is quite profitable, just not for the bettors, more for the operators.
The operators are cashing out big time.
Big time on your 1K here and there, okay?
So, how do these African figures stack up globally?
Okay, so I'm going to give a sample of the United States, right? The total gambling market in the United States as of 2025 was costed at about $121 billion. So with the United States, the numbers are quite interesting, right? Because 20% of adults in the US place bets, which is significantly lower than the 70% you find in Africa. So what happens with the US is that there is higher spend and lower participation. So the average bettor in America spends about $3,000 in betting per year. When you compare that to the $10 that Africans spend monthly, in a year they're spending $120 in a year, but the average American spends about $3,000 on bets annually. So what you find is that there's low participation in the American betting market, but high cost inputs, right? You see people spending $3,000, but in the African market, there's high participation and then low spend.
So betting is widespread in Africa, right?
Very widespread.
Okay.
Very, very widespread.
So that brings us to a very uncomfortable questions for bettors. Do they actually make money?
Hey, I know you like to think that you're going to escape from poverty by betting, but unfortunately, the data says otherwise very clearly. So, 95 to 97% of bettors actually lose their money. 95 to 97% of bettors actually do not make their money back. Only 1 to 3% are actually profitable, right? And the maths is actually very starkly. I wonder why people bet. Because when you look at the maths, the odds are highly against you. So you have to win 52% of your bets every time to be profitable, right? When you look at recreational betting, it's very difficult to achieve those numbers. So if maths and the statistics and data from over time is telling you that 97% of the time you bet, you're going to lose your money, why do people still engage in it?
So any system that mathematically depends on people losing is telling us how sustainable that investment really is.
Yep. So it's really not sustainable for you to keep betting. The numbers say so.
So for a more clear understanding, give us a life scenario.
Okay, so I hear a lot of people say I don't spend too much on betting. So let's assume a young graduate who spends 1,000 naira daily on betting. It may look insignificant, right? It's just 1,000 naira. But when you multiply that daily by 30 days in a month, that young graduate has spent 30,000 naira in a month on betting. In a whole year, that translates into 360,000 naira. This is money that if you were to put in the stock market, would probably have worked on your behalf, right? So the maths say that statistically, that 360,000 naira doesn't come back to the bettor 97% of the time. Yeah. So out of that 360,000 naira, you're probably losing 330,000 naira to the operator. That's to the house. I'm talking about Betway, Bet King, Bet Nigeria, all the bets that you have, right? So when you do the math, it doesn't add up.
It sure doesn't. So behind the hype and all, what should people actually take away from this?
Okay, so this is not moral advice. This is us just stating the numbers and stating the stats, right? Betting is more than just entertainment, especially in this day and age, in this capitalist society. The betting world has become a very large digital economy that thrives on a habit that you probably should change, right? It thrives on your mobile phone. It thrives on the mindset or the idea that you're going to win the next one, right? But when you look at it, you're not really winning. Who's winning is the operators, is the house, right? So when you look at the math, you look at the risk involved, you look at the returns you're getting, in the real sense of it, betting doesn't make sense. So we're hoping that from this conversation and from these statistics that have been provided, you are able to learn that betting doesn't actually work for the bettor. It works majorly for the operator.
There you have it, the data behind the habit. That is all for this week on the TSG Data Desk. My name is Success.
And my name is Agatha. See you all next week.
Bye.